switching gears over to financials, and this first one is really environmental project financials. A number of releases ago, we introduced the ability to we introduced payable tracking or accounts payable tracking, and the initial implementation, essentially, you would have a parent purchase order, and that had a lump sum amount, and then payables and payable items underneath that purchase order that represent what the agency actually paid out to their vendors. We had a situation arise where one of our clients wanted to be able to, at a very granular level, track the work that they expected to be done on the purchase order, and then be able to track the amount that was actually paid out against those individual items, against those individual purchase order items. We introduced the ability to itemize charges on the purchase order. These are configured, one, at the project type level. So the project type will dictate whether or not the itemized purchase order functionality is available, or kind of the base, more loosey-goosey version is available. And then the calculation methods are for each of the payable items is configured on the payable item type screen. And then payable items and their amounts are assigned to the purchase orders and then paid via the payable item screen. So let's take a look at this. This out of the way. Okay. Quickly, I'm in the lookups in the lookups area, the admin section of the app, and I am on the payable item type lookup screen. In here, we can see that. So let's take a look at this hotel stay one. And okay, so what we can see here are, first of all, just our general lookup item fields. You can configure whether or not a given payable item type is positive or negative, and that's important for things like items that might not end up getting paid out to paid back to the vendor in the case the agency decides that the work wasn't done, maybe. Most importantly is the calculation method. So for a given payable item type, you can either have a flat fee, which the internal user would enter $100 for a hotel stay, or a quantity and rate. So if I choose this, you would enter a unit. So say, for example, hours, and then $100 an hour in the case that this payable item is actually billable hours. Okay, so I'll cancel this. Go over to an actual project activity. Okay, so I'm on a project activity on my Woodward disposal site, taking a look at a purchase order. And this project activity type is configured to have its amount calculated by line items. And you can see I have two here. This first one is sample collection, ground order purge. I have collected 10 samples at $34 a sample, and for a line item amount of $340. So this is essentially what, at the purchase order level, this is what the agency expects to pay out, or yeah. And second one, hotel stay, $100 for that hotel stay. And again, this is at the purchase order level, hasn't yet been paid. If I cancel out of this, I can see underneath this purchase order here, I have a payable underneath it for the $440. And on the screen, what I actually am doing is I am selecting purchase order line items that I am going to end up paying. So when I click a purchase order line item, I get a payable item underneath here that represents the purchase order item that I chose, for the amount of the purchase order line item. And say, for example, that you don't actually pay out the whole thing. You don't pay all 10 samples, you only pay a portion of the samples. You can edit either the payable item amount or the quantity to reflect what's actually getting paid out. Okay. Couple other financial enhancements. So on the financials list screen, the account financials list screen, on our other account screens, we recently introduced this program area toggle for, say, for example, you have a bunch of submissions that are for a number of different programs on a multimedia site, but you're really only concerned with the air submissions. You would configure that in your user account screen, and then you could click the mine toggle and only see the air submissions. Well, we introduced that same functionality on the financial list screen. Pretty simple there. Okay, one more. The invoice due date. We realized that just simply having the charge date might not be sufficient. We actually wanted to introduce a date by which the invoice or the fee had to be paid. So that's configurable by fee category. You set the due date when you're creating an ad hoc fee from the submission screen, or you can also set the due date on a whole bulk set of invoices when you are bulk generating invoices on the admin screen. And then I apologize, that's a little cut off, but that will actually display on the financial search screen. And I believe you can configure violations to be created if the invoice is not paid by the due date. Okay, that is everything I have, and I think I'm passing it over to Bob for nSPECT updates. All right, yes. Bob, are you on? Got mute.
Mike, that's the problem. If I'm
there we go.
web conferences. Okay. So thank you. So we're going to have to just talk through some nSPECT changes that are coming. So the major piece is that we're updating the nSPECT app. First of all, we're using this technology called .NET MAUI, which is basically a .NET framework, a part of the .NET framework that the rest of nVIRO is built on. So the current app that we have is built on a different platform. And so what it means is we have to do a little extra work to make things compatible between the app version and the web version of the inspection forms. So this will help consolidate that process. So available for. So what it means is that it'll be available, the app will be available in the Apple and Android for phones and tablets as they are today, and available through the Apple App Store or the Android Play Store. Again, same thing as they are today. But it's the last item, Windows. That is the big change that the technology allows us to essentially deploy to the Microsoft Store as well. So this is the major piece of this that allows with this changes. So for those clients that use Windows devices for their inspections, like a Surface Pro, or even just a laptop that's yet running Windows, they'll be able to run the app on those devices. It also means that what the other part of this means is that it will also be able to be deployed on the desktop, similar to other applications on your computer. Not necessarily quite Office-like, but essentially the same type of concept where you click the app and it open up, and then you could then perform the inspection, or you could for those that go out in the field and then they come back and they clean up their inspections, type up their comments or whatnot. That information can all be done on the app on the desktop, or laptop computer, whichever you're using. So that's the major change there. Then the last piece is that we are showing here basically that we're including then the site search and review functions that have lived in the web app and not part of the application to date. those will also be part of the inspections. So you'll have the inspections, site search, and review functions in the app now. Okay. So what that means then is that the current website, we're going to basically sort of be dedicated only to the administrative functions going forward. So basically that means primarily the form design, user and security management, and reports would then live only in the web app. So really kind of it'll be what we're doing is really trying to separate this. The major advantage of this is we're trying to consolidate our code base, and so we can make it easier to maintain nSPECT instead of having the web version that's has a mobile mode, and then also the app version as well. We'll have one code base so that it'll make it easier for us to deploy, make it easier if there are issues to figure out what those issues are. Instead of, for some of you that have had issues that we tend to ask, is that the app or is that the web? So it'll be one consistent place. So that'll be one of the major key aspects of this benefit for us. The other piece that has happened and is that it updates this update will also insulate us from any web browser changes. So most recently, most likely, most of you have experienced the issue when Chrome and Edge, made a change that caused problems for Ace Office. nSPECT actually went through something very similar about 4 years ago, and it impacted how the mobile mode for inspections happened. Basically, we were using some underlying information about how we store data offline that was changed in the browsers. That all of a sudden meant that we had to scramble to come up with a new option. So it was, so basically the idea is if we go away from the web version, we'll be able to really control that much more effectively. And the last piece here is the fact that the anticipated release would be the 2025.1 release, which I believe is the end of April 2025. So that is anticipated. There is a lot of work to be done because of this change. There's a lot of moving parts, so a lot of testing that needs to happen. So the other point, I guess, is that this will be the app. So for those that are maybe it's not very obvious here, is that when we deploy the application, when we deploy nVIRO, the different releases, 2025.4.2 or 2025.1. What we're including is the nSPECT, the actual web browser application, and then separately, the app itself is getting deployed, kind of as needed as well. So what we're going to make sure is going to happen is that they're backward compatible when we need to. So as we get closer to the release, we'll provide more information about what it needs to happen to make this all work seamlessly.